Good afternoon and welcome to the Hibs Observer briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Murray Grayston to look back at Hibs' Scottish Cup victory over Ayr United on Friday night and to take a wee look ahead to tonight's Scottish Cup draw for the quarter-finals. Take a wee look at how far into this competition Hibs can get, just one step away now from Hampden. Of course, before we get started, folks, just a wee quick word, as always, for our sponsor, Good Vibes Giveaways. They're proud to sponsor the Hibs Observer and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include tech and gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash and even Oasis tickets. So you can get your tickets now at www.goodvibesgiveaways.com. So Murray, thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate it. You were at Somerset Park on Friday. Hibs left it a wee bit late, but well worth the victory in the end, do you feel?
Yeah, I feel, to be honest, that I mentioned to yourself before we came on that the game started pretty frantic. He obviously had a huge chance with George Oakley before Hibs even registered anything of note in the game. But thereafter, all the clear-cut chances came the way of Hibs. I think Martin Boyle had two gilt edge opportunities to put Hibs ahead, which, one of them goes in and you're probably looking at a lot more of a comfortable scoreline or even a much more comfortable game than waiting to the 87th minute. But I think on the whole, it was probably a deserved victory for Hibs, albeit hard fought in the end up.
Yeah, I definitely have. But I think it was always going to be that way. I don't think anybody was expecting a walkover. And certainly, I think you mentioned that you had obviously been there and got a better look at it. The pitch to me, didn't look too bad to me on the telly. I think I was maybe just comparing it to Ross County's pitch, which I saw in the flesh a few weeks ago. But I suppose, looking back, it probably didn't make for a free-flowing game. It was always going to be a bit, I think, I don't know if tense is a word, but there wasn't a lot to separate the two teams I think especially in the first half, as you said there, Ayr had a good chance through George Oakley, but I feel as the sort of time wore on, Hibs always looked the more likely. But I think it's, I think we could get into, bogged down in performance and, what was maybe not so great about it. I did feel Hibs lacked a bit of attacking fluency. I think there was some issues there, although that did improve. I think when Keenan Bowie came onto the pitch, we'll deal with that a wee bit. But it was a bit a classic. Just get into the next round of the cup. I think that's all. Is that all fans really care about with these fixtures?
Personally speaking, I was delighted. I didn't fancy another half an hour, one of just watching the game in general, to be honest, more than anything else. But that is all that matters. That's the crux of it. I don't think the performance was great. I don't think the pitch was particularly well set up for a great performance either, to be honest. Like I said, from the stand, you could see the ball bobbling about, which is a struggle for one of our main points for driving forward recently has been getting Nectar Triantis on the ball. He's quite neat, turning, driving forward with it. You could see trying to get the ball into feet instead of just the one-touch turn. It was, 2 and 3 to try and get it under control.
Yeah.
And I think we really struggled to get the Cadden twins into the game, which is something that's obviously been one of our strong points this season, particularly Nicky Cadden. I thought he had a pretty quiet game by his standards, and even the one or two times he did seem to get in and beat his man, the final ball wasn't quite what we've been used to this season. So
yeah,
in the end up, you get the result and you take it, and a goal from a long throw in, which is nice to be on the end of scoring one rather than on the receiving end for a change this season.
I can think of a couple of examples. As you said, it was the final ball I thought was lacking for most of the game. And I said we'll come to Keenan Bowie, but I think we need to give him the respect he deserves and talk about Rocky Bushiri first of all. Bowie's involved in it. The long throw comes in, Bowie flicks it on, and then he's there at the back post again. Rocky Bushiri, right place, right time. He's making a habit of this, isn't he?
It's strange how players seem to do this at Hibs as well. If you recall, David Gray didn't score, I don't think, a professional goal until he came to Hibs, and then he made a habit of scoring them. I think 3 times against Rangers, let alone that one particularly memorable one. And it seems to be that's what Rocky's come to start doing this season.
Yeah.
And you know what, we'll take it. I think there's been a while where perhaps we've not posed a threat from set pieces. There's probably games in past seasons where I've watched us get, a dozen corners and you just never think of anything we're going to concede in the kind of counter attack going the other way. So it's nice to have a little bit of threat going forward. And going the other way, Rocky's game on Friday I thought was really impressive. I think you perhaps off air that I thought he was going to struggle with George Oakley. I thought he was going to get embroiled in a real physical battle, which he did, but it was a physical battle that I really thought he won. I thought he got the better of Oakley any time that he did get kind of pinned and you thought he might get turned. He just done really well, and he didn't do anything rash, which I think not often that feeling you get is that there's a mistake in there. But everything seemed calm. He seemed to make the right decisions at the right times, and I don't know, it's testament to him since he's came back into the team that the results and performances have been improved, and he just seems to be getting better with every game.
Yeah, I know it has been quite a turnaround. I think that would have been. I think it would have been 4 games without a goal if he hadn't scored on Friday. People might have started asking questions about his goal scoring form. Just it's been such a kind of stark and kind of a sort of welcome addition to his game. And I suppose the question is, he's out of contract at the end of the season. He seems to have really. I mean, there have been a few players who have benefited from this switch to a 3 at the back, but I would probably argue none more so than Rocky. He really seems to, it just suits his game being at the heart of that. There's probably not as much responsibility on him, the way there was last season, where it was to try and start attacks when he was playing that left centre back role under Nick Montgomery. It sort of maximises what he's good at, and I think a couple of months ago, people would have been looking at his contract situation and thinking, well, it looks like a guy he's not in the team, obviously. His contract's come to an end, most likely going to move on. So, I mean, but it's now got to that stage where it's not so clear-cut anymore. He's becoming a bit of a cult figure. A lot of people, I'd imagine, I mean, I'll ask your opinion in a minute, would like him to stay. He was asked about it after the game on Friday. So he was asked if there'd been any discussions about a new deal, and he said, not yet. I'm out of contract at the end of the season. We'll see what happens. The window is shut now, so my full focus is on Hibs. There have been rumours, but it's not up to the club how they will react to it. He was obviously linked to a move to Egypt. They said it was always good when you play well, you attract interest from different clubs. It's also a boost. It's not always a bad thing when you can't leave the club, but I'm now open and we'll see how the club will react to it in the coming months. We'll see. So it kind of felt like he's putting the ball in Hibs' court a wee bit there, because he did have that interview round about Christmas time. I think it was with it was a kind of media maybe back in his homeland, I think, where he was kind of suggesting that he'd like to extend his contract if possible. There is obviously, as happens when players are out of contract, there'll be clubs having a look. Where do you stand on it? Would you like to see him offered a new deal?
I would say absolutely. I think if there's one thing we learned from Paul Hanlon and Lewis Stevenson, it's that the grass isn't always greener, and there's nothing worse than letting these contracts run down until the last 6 months and then panicking and throwing a deal. But I think when you see the performances he's been put in now, whether you see Rocky Bushiri as a nailed-on Hibs starter every week, or whether you think he's someone who could perhaps move on from in the future, I don't think there's any harm in having someone that knows the club, is very passionate about the club, as you can see, literally throwing his head on the line on Friday on a cold night down in Ayrshire. I don't think there's any harm in having someone like that rounding about the building, and he's shown that he's got a great mentality. I think anyone else in Rocky's situation, you would have kind of had no problems if they'd ended up crumbling. He's one of the first that gets stick, sometimes justified and many times not. And he's kind of came back in completely out of the team, out in the cold at the start of the season, and his introduction into the starting 11s coincided with this great run that we're on. So personally speaking, I would have absolutely no issue, and I'd actually quite like to see him hang around for a little bit longer. Yeah,
it's that resilience, isn't it? Because he could have down tools easily. A player in his situation, as you say, running out of contract. And I think there's a sort of connection that they're sort of building with the fans now. Because I think above all else, he just comes across as a really likeable big guy, doesn't he?
Absolutely. And I mean, when you talk about character, obviously the game at Tynecastle, where you've got however many thousand Hearts fans singing his name because he scored an own goal that's got him back into the game. But thereafter, he performed great, and we get away with a real run at Tynecastle. I just think he's a kind of character that's hard to come by, and I wouldn't want to see him go, and I think it's one of those ones that you don't want to be in a position where you don't realise what you had until it's gone.
Yep.
He's not without his shortcomings, and he is a player with a mistake in him from time to time, but sometimes you just need to take that for what it is. And
yeah,
you see what Effie Ambrose was like, cult hero at Hibs, but not exactly the most I don't know, traditional centre half.
yeah, I know exactly. So I mean, we'll see what happens over the coming weeks and months as regards to Rocky's contract. But it did sort of look to me as though he was trying to put the ball into the club's court a wee bit there. Just before we'll touch on another couple of players before we move on to the next round of the cup. Look at the cup draw. So, word for Jordan Smith continues to endear himself to the Hibs fans, Murray.
Yeah, I should preempt all of this by saying I've played amateur football in goals to an exceptional standard, so I feel very qualified to comment on this. But Jordan Smith's been what we've kind of been looking for at the back. Obviously, his first game against Aberdeen was a little bit shaky, but it was a guy that was kind of thrown in a kind of challenging scenario. Since then, he's been solid. I mean, he had one really big save to make, obviously the one I mentioned previously, when George Oakley's been slid through, he stood up well. He's blocked the shot. He's done great there. And then towards the end of the game, and it's not just that he made the saves, the kind of two of the shots from Marco Reus and Jamie Murphy towards the end, it's how he deals with them. I would have said they were comfortable saves. You're not expecting them to get past them. Yeah. But from where I was sitting, that first one especially, he pushes that far enough away that I think it was Nick McAllister was running in, completely caught underneath it because he's pushed it far enough away. He's taken out of danger. And then the second one again, he's done it. The amount of pressure that takes off you, that he's not palming it back into dangerous areas and putting the defence under pressure, and they're coming out for crosses and claiming them, and it makes a big difference to the people in front of him. I think you can tell now that the back three are a lot more assured with him behind them at the moment, and they're confident in them, and that kind of breeds throughout the team. And I just think, considering we all probably thought he was brought in to be a second choice, I've been really impressed with him.
Yeah. Aye, he's going from strength to strength, and again, another kind of you put him and Rocky up there as perhaps the two biggest success stories of this turnaround. Not including David Gray. So I mean, just before we move on, I thought Kieran Bowie made a real difference when he came on Friday. I don't think Mikola Kugarevich had a great game at all. I know he's like Bowie, he's not played an awful lot of football. I thought he looked a bit rusty. I don't think he really did what Hibs needed him to do in that game. But Bowie I was impressed with, and I have been every time he's come on. You're getting wee glimpses of kind of what he's all about, really, aren't you? But he just, I feel like, I'm not saying Hibs were, absolutely sparkling after Bowie came on, but I did feel in the final third they carried a wee bit more of a threat. I think just because he's one of those guys, and Craig Nisbet and I have talked about this on here, and I think on our kind of last tactical review about, he's one of those guys that I think other players can be confident when the ball goes up to him, they kind of know it's going to stick. And I just feel he brings an awful lot to the table. We're only getting, as I said, sort of wee glimpses of it at the moment, because Hibs are obviously, very obvious reasons being careful in managing these minutes. But there does seem to be a lot of promise there, for what I can tell.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you're talking about the switch to bring him on for Kugarevich, that was probably coincided with when we started to kind of dominate the second half. Because I think to begin with, they were actually on top of us, and it was a change that had to be made. I think you kind of nailed it with the ball just didn't seem to be sticking with Mikola the whole game. It never seemed to be really getting it under control, and that's what you were looking for, was him to get it under control and bring the kind of wide players or kind of Josh Campbell running on into the game. And because that was happening, everything just seemed to be breaking down when we got into that final third. Maybe it's a case of just a kind of lack of match sharpness, and it's something that you still see a little bit from Bowie. You can tell there's a wee bit of kind of rust there, but it's like you say, it just seemed that once he came on, that's when we started to get joys in other areas, because he's occupying defenders, and the ball was sticking up there, and it brought everyone else into the game, and we were a lot better for it, I think.
Yeah, I don't mean to undersell him, because he obviously brings a lot more to the table than this, but he is the definition of a kind of nuisance for defenders. Yeah. I think his movement, he's very busy, and the size of him as well. He's a big, kind of strong lad. So I think, obviously that what Hibs fans will be looking forward to now is seeing him get a first start, and you do wonder how far away that is, because his minutes are just kind of slowly creeping up, and it's getting to the stage where I don't think it'll be that far away. But we'll maybe look into that in a wee bit more detail later in the week as we build into Sunday's game against St Mirren. But first, let's take a look at the next round, the Scottish Cup draw. So there's one tie still to be played. St Mirren themselves actually are hosting Hearts later tonight. But so far in the hat for the quarterfinals are Hibs, Livingston, Dundee, St Johnstone, Celtic, Aberdeen and Queen's Park. So the draws kind of opened up a wee bit there with Rangers going out. Obviously Celtic still in, still, firm favourites to go on and win it, but it's kind of opened up to an extent there. It could do even further depending on what happens tonight. So I mean, if you look at those teams, who do you kind of fancy for the next round? So I suppose there's a couple of ways to look at this. The way I would maybe see it as, you're obviously wanting a home draw in the quarterfinals. I think it's kind of got to the stage of the competition where Hibs fans have had a good away day on Friday there. So I think when it gets to the sort of business end of it, and certainly before the round, before you go to Hampden, I think a home tie's got to be preferable. But then it's who do you fancy? Would you rather take for example, Livingston, the Championship side, they're still left in. Would you rather take Livingston, or is there a school of thought maybe like you think at some point if you're going to win the Scottish Cup this season, you're going to have to beat Celtic? So would you rather play them now at Easter Road for the kind of ultimate challenge, or is that just a bridge that you cross if and when you come to it? Or where do you stand on it? I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying I would rather Hibs drew Celtic at this point in the competition. I'm just trying to look at different ways of looking at it.
It is one of those ones, and you're 100% correct. If you're going to win the Scottish Cup this season, you've got to imagine you've got to beat Celtic at some point on that run. Would you rather take them when you can get them at Easter Road? So obviously after this round, assuming you progress, there's no other chance to do that. So, but I think if you can avoid them until the final, you do that. Once you get to Hampden, the very controversial 50-50 split, hopefully, and then you take that. So it's a one-off game. I think before that, I mean, you can look into it in a kind of tactical way. If you want to put too much thought into it, maybe you hope Livingston draw Queen's Park and you've got a guaranteed championship team in the semi-finals. There's a possibility to draw. I think you can nail it with the exception of Celtic. You would take anyone at Easter Road at this point. If Hearts get through, I wouldn't be surprised to see us draw Hearts, because I'm amazed that we've avoided them until this stage. But we usually draw them in the fourth round or something, some earlier stage in the competition. But I'd argue another one you'd like to avoid Hearts. Just that's almost from a sceptical Hibs supporters standpoint of, it's bad enough getting put out of the Scottish Cup, but if you get put out of the Hearts, it's twice as bad. But I honestly think if we can get anyone at Easter Road, I'd fancy our chances. If I had to avoid kind of one of the teams that's in there, with the exception of Celtic, I'd probably say the winners are St Mirren Hearts tonight, because we've not got the best record against St Mirren. They seem to match up quite well against us, and Hearts is Hearts. As much as it'd be great to put them out, probably best to avoid, just in case. Let someone else take care of them, hopefully. But other than that, I mean, you could say draw the championship teams. Obviously, we've played Queen's Park already this season in the League Cup. Completely different, obviously, playing them early in the season in a kind of not pre-season tournament, because obviously it's the League Cup, but it'd be a kind of completely different kettle of fish if you face them now, with the changes in both sides from then. But maybe that gives you that little bit of confidence that not only are they in the league below you, you've beat them once pretty comfortably before. Maybe that's something that kind of benefits us. But yeah, if you can avoid that, and probably avoid a draw today. Well, it's not the Tony Macaroni anymore, but no, I'm sure as much as it's a short trip, I don't think anyone fancies a game on that.
Tony Macaroni.
I don't think anyone fancies a trip to the Tony Macaroni and some Davy Martindale ball. So maybe if we can avoid that as well.
It's a potentially awkward one, that, isn't it? But then I think you're kind of looking at it as well, like, Queen's Park, they'll be on a high. As much as you'd think on paper getting one of the two championship teams is the most favourable draw. It wouldn't be easy either way. Obviously different, I think, if you draw them at Easter Road. But having to go away to maybe Livingston, that could be potentially awkward. I mean, I've said here that the draw has opened up, but it has in the sense that Rangers would have probably been second favourites at the start of the tournament, but there's still potentially some really awkward ties there, and you could end up going up to Dens Park. You could end up going to Pittodrie. It's all to play for, but it's still I think it's still quite a tough field there. But I mean, how confident are you feeling that Hibs can really make a go of this?
I mean, I'm a lot more confident than if you asked me maybe 2-3 months ago. I honestly think at this point, like the run that you're on, and kind of long may that continue, you are reasonably confident. You feel like maybe other teams looking at the draw are thinking, well, you don't fancy taking on Hibs just now, which is a great position to be in.
Yeah.
And I think we've been here before. I'm kind of looking back to I think it would have still been lockdown tournaments maybe in 2021 when obviously the semi-finals opened right up, and the semi-finals of both the League Cup and the Scottish Cup, there was no Old Firm teams in it, which opened it right up for us, and we made one final, got beaten one semi-final, and the less said about that St Johnstone team, the better. Brings back some horrible memories, but I honestly, I'm feeling reasonably confident at the moment. I just think it is all about not drawing Celtic. I think even when you're talking about kind of Queen's Park and the higher beaten Rangers, I almost feel sometimes once you've done that, like where do you go from there? It's almost as if anything thereafter is just almost a bit of a come down for them. And
because it must be draining emotionally, physically, to rouse yourself again, I suppose.
Because I think
what you're making there,
quite often you'll see teams, knocking out a Rangers or a Celtic, and they kind of struggle to live up to it again. Even looking back as kind of far as when Ross County made it to the final, where they played Dundee United after as a championship team knocking Celtic out at Hampden, but they then go and get beat 3-0 in the final, albeit a strong Dundee United team. But it's just how do you live up to that? How do you do it again? And I would much rather, if we're going to play a huge team or one of the kind of superior teams, that you don't play them until it's a one-off game at Hampden, maybe with the exception of Hearts. Again, that's just a wee bit of PTSD kicking in.
So, I mean, we'll find out in a few hours. As I said, St Mirren against Hearts is 7:45 p.m. tonight in Paisley, and then the draw will follow after that. We'll have coverage of the draw on the website. Just before we go, folks, if you've not subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, do consider hitting that button, because it not only helps us grow the channel and keep expanding our content, but it means you get a notification every time we go live. But we're going to leave it there for today. We'll start building into the weekend's game over the next few days. We've also got some exclusive content that's going to be on the website over the next few days as well, so do keep an eye out for that. Murray, thanks as always for joining us.
No, thank you for having me on again.
You're 100% record on the Hibs post-match briefings now. 1 from 1. When we started having Craig Nisbet on, I think it was about 6 weeks before he got on to actually analyse a Hibs win. So do count yourself that you've managed to get one first time. So yeah, as I said, folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Murray, for joining us. We'll speak to you again very, very soon. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.